Standoff in Australia. Crowds protesting against Islam face anti-fascist activists calling for religious tolerance. The streets of Bahrain see violent protests over the Saudi-led airstrikes and the ever-rising death toll in Yemen. And people sacrifice their privacy to social networks in the search for career success, though they often put their jobs at risk with a misplaced word or statement. Just turning 12 o'clock noon here in the Russian capital. It's RT International with me, Rory Souchet. From all of us here, welcome to your headlines. Are Muslims welcome in Australia? That's the question that has seen thousands take to the streets across the nation's biggest cities. In Melbourne, there has been a real intensity to the events there. Anti-Islamic activists marched with banners saying no Sharia law and stop Islamic terrorism. They faced off against anti-racists and anti-fascists, calling for tolerance and the right to religious diversity. But the police had to separate a number of them after clashes broke out. One of the organisers of the anti-fascist demonstration, Mel Gregson, spoke to us from Melbourne, right in the middle of the crowd.
People have a right to freedom of speech, but people need to be accountable to what they say. And if people are spreading hate speech and lies, particularly about religious or ethnic minorities, then they need to be held accountable for that. And what we're saying is that the streets of Melbourne are no place for anti-Muslim racist ideas. Unfortunately, in Australia, the Muslim communities have been under attack for over a decade now. First, by politicians attempting to justify foreign wars in the Middle East, then used by politicians to try to justify the locking up of refugees, and most recently used by our Prime Minister Tony Abbott, who is trying to distract attention away from the fact that his government and his policies are so unpopular. He's decided to point the finger at the 2% of the population that identifies as Muslims instead of addressing the problems that Australia actually faces.
And Prime Minister Tony Abbott's comments about migrants and especially Muslims have stirred the debate in recent months.
It's clear to me that for too long we have given those who might be a threat to our country the benefit of the doubt. Western leaders describe Islam as a religion of peace. I wish more Muslim leaders would say that more often and mean it.
And Professor of Political Science Greg Feely shares the opinion of some activists who believe comments like that are actually helping to create a hostile environment.
Although they claim it's to protect an Australian way of life, their vision of that way of life is very much an Anglo-centric one, and it's one that often quite specifically rejects the role of Muslims in Australia. They often link the Muslim community to radicalisation. And so whatever the organisers call this demonstration, I think it's right to see it as in some way racist and anti-Muslim. That's clear is that there will be opposing demonstrations, counter-demonstrations from leftist groups who claim that these kinds of protests are in fact contrary to Australia's multicultural heritage. Prime Minister Tony Abbott has made a couple of unfortunate remarks about the Muslim community, and so this particular set of protests will probably add to the sense that it's not a particularly congenial environment for Muslims at the moment in Australia.